The Royal Decree. On the vibrant planet of Varanthia, where bioluminescent flora illuminated sprawling cities under a lavender sky, tension simmered within the grand halls of the royal palace. King Thorian Valorous II sat upon his crystalline throne, his regal presence commanding attention from nobles and diplomats alike, gathered in anticipation of his address. The atmosphere was thick with whispers as King Thorian raised a hand for silence, his deep azure skin shimmering under the ethereal light that filtered through stained glass windows, depicting ancient Varinthian legends. His piercing silver eyes scanned the assembly before settling on his three daughters, Lyra, Selene, and Mira, who stood to his left like radiant jewels against a backdrop of opulence. Commander Ethan Carter, an envoy from Earth with tousled brown hair and an air of quiet confidence, stood before them clad in formal attire that contrasted starkly with the vibrant colors of Varinthian fashion surrounding him. Despite being an elite member of Earth's diplomatic corps, he felt like an outsider in this alien court. As King Thorian began to speak, his voice resonated through the hall like thunder rolling across distant mountains. For centuries, he proclaimed, the Varinthian Empire has prided itself on wisdom and enlightenment. Yet today, I find myself troubled by a growing arrogance among my own kin. Lyra's emerald skin glowed with indignation as she exchanged glances with her sisters Selene and Mira, one sapphire-hued and contemplative, the other violet-skinned and curious. They had been vocal in their disdain for humans ever since Ethan arrived on Varanthia for this diplomatic mission, aimed at strengthening ties between Earth and their advanced civilization. Father, Lyra interjected boldly, her voice laced with defiance. How can you expect us to accept this human among us? He is primitive, driven by base desires. Ethan maintained a neutral expression despite feeling the weight of her scornful gaze upon him. He had endured months of ridicule from these royal sisters. Now it seemed he would face an even greater challenge. King Thorian's expression hardened as he addressed Lyra's outburst. It is precisely that arrogance that troubles me, he replied firmly. Therefore, I decree that my daughters shall marry Commander Ethan Carter. Gasps filled the hall as shockwaves rippled through those present. The nobles exchanged incredulous looks, while murmurs of disbelief echoed off marble walls. Father, Selene exclaimed incredulously as she stepped forward beside Lyra, her sapphire skin flushing with anger. You cannot be serious. We are royalty. How can you expect us to wed a human? I am entirely serious, King Thorian replied sharply, his tone brooking no argument. For 1 year you shall be bound to him in marriage, a union meant to teach you humility through service. Mira remained silent throughout her father's proclamation, but observed Ethan closely with her dark violet eyes that sparkled with intrigue amidst her sister's outrage. Ethan finally spoke up, his deep voice cutting through the tension in the room like a knife through silk. Your Majesty, he said respectfully but cautiously, while I am honored by your unique solution to this situation, are you certain this is wise? A knowing smile crept across King Thorian's lips as he regarded Ethan with newfound respect. Commander Carter, he replied thoughtfully, you have shown nothing but honor in your dealings with us despite my daughter's constant derision. Perhaps living alongside you will teach them lessons they sorely need. With that decree echoing in their ears like a bell tolling doom for their freedom, Lyra's expression darkened further while Selene crossed her arms defiantly against her chest. You cannot force us into this, Lyra protested vehemently. You will marry him tomorrow at dawn. King Thorian declared resolutely before dismissing them all with a wave of his hand. As murmurs erupted throughout the court at this unprecedented arrangement, the three princesses stormed out of the hall in disbelief, while Ethan found himself chuckling softly at fate's ironic twist. From diplomatic envoy to royal consort, all within mere moments. The next morning dawned bright over Varanthia as preparations for their wedding commenced within lavish chambers adorned with flowers that glowed softly under artificial lights designed to mimic natural sunlight. Ethan stood at attention before an ornate mirror while adjusting his formal attire, a blend of Earth's military style infused with traditional Verinthian elements, to reflect both cultures' significance in this union, destined for history books yet unwritten. Meanwhile, outside his chamber door echoed hushed whispers, filled with disbelief from Lyra, who paced restlessly nearby like a caged predator readying itself for escape. Selene remained stoic yet contemplative, while Mira watched curiously from afar, a silent observer caught between loyalty toward family tradition versus intrigue toward this unexpected alliance forged by royal decree. As they prepared for what lay ahead, each sister grappling internally with conflicting emotions, one thing became clear: destiny had woven an intricate tapestry binding them all together, adjusting to new realities. The morning sun bathed the palace of Verenthia in a warm glow, casting intricate shadows through the ornate windows of Ethan's new quarters. The room was a blend of earthly military functionality and Verenthian elegance, featuring sleek lines and vibrant colors that reflected the alien culture. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding him, Ethan felt a sense of unease. The weight of King Thorian's decree loomed heavily over him, and he knew that the next year would be anything but ordinary. New living arrangements. As Ethan stood by the window, gazing out at the sprawling gardens filled with luminescent flowers, he heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching. The door swung open, revealing Lyra, Selene, and Mira, his soon-to-be wives, each adorned in their stunning royal attire. Lyra's emerald skin shimmered with indignation, Selene's sapphire hue reflected her pragmatic nature, and Mira's violet complexion glowed with an air of curiosity. "This is absurd," Lyra declared, her voice sharp as a blade. "You cannot expect us to live with this human for an entire year." Ethan turned to face them, maintaining his composure despite their hostility. "Your father's decree is clear. We need to find a way to coexist." Selene crossed her arms defiantly. "Coexist? You mean endure this farce? We are royalty. We do not belong to you or your kind." Mira stepped forward, her expression more contemplative than her sister's. "Perhaps we should consider this an opportunity," she suggested softly. "We might learn something from each other." Lyra scoffed at Mira's words. "Learn what? How to tolerate being married to a human." Ethan interjected before the argument could escalate further. "I understand that this situation is difficult for all of you, but I believe we can make it work if we establish some ground rules." Character dynamics. As they settled into a tense discussion about their living arrangements, Ethan took note of each sister's unique personality. Lyra was fiercely independent and resistant to change. Selene was practical, but harbored deep-seated prejudices. And Mira was the most open-minded, curious about the world beyond her royal upbringing. "First," Ethan began, "let's agree on no more species-based insults. I won't tolerate disrespect towards any of you either." Lyra rolled her eyes but remained silent. "Second," he continued, "we should treat each other with basic courtesy. This marriage may be politically motivated, but we are still individuals deserving of respect." Selene raised an eyebrow skeptically. "And what if we refuse?" Ethan smiled slightly, his confidence growing as he faced them. "Then I will have no choice but to inform your father how his daughters are representing the Verinthian Empire." The sisters exchanged glances, surprise flickering across their faces at his boldness. "You're serious?" Selene asked. "Absolutely," Ethan replied firmly. "This is not just about duty. It's about finding common ground." Tension builds. Despite their initial resistance, the sisters found themselves intrigued by Ethan's straightforward approach. The tension in the room began to shift as they considered his words. "You think you can teach us humility?" Lyra challenged. "I don't think it's just about teaching," Ethan replied earnestly. "It's about learning from each other. We all have our strengths and weaknesses." Mira stepped closer, her violet eyes sparkling with interest. "What do you know about us?" "About Verenthia?" Ethan smiled at her curiosity. I know that your culture values knowledge and wisdom above all else. I've read about your history, how your people have thrived through cooperation and understanding." Celine scoffed again, but didn't dismiss him outright this time. "And what do you think of humans?" Mira asked, tilting her head slightly as she studied him. Ethan took a deep breath before answering. "I think humans are flawed but capable of great things when they come together for a common purpose, just like any other species." Lyra shook her head in disbelief. "You really believe that?" "I do," Ethan replied sincerely. "And I hope that over time, you might see that too." Unexpected connections. As days turned into weeks, their initial animosity slowly transformed into something more complex. The sisters began to engage with Ethan in ways they hadn't anticipated, sharing stories of their upbringing and learning about Earth's customs in return. One evening, while they gathered for dinner in the palace dining hall, a magnificent chamber adorned with shimmering crystals, Mira surprised everyone by asking Ethan about his home planet. "What is Earth like?" she inquired, genuine curiosity evident in her tone. Ethan leaned back in his chair, encouraged by her interest. "It's diverse, full of different cultures and landscapes. Some places are beautiful and peaceful, others are chaotic and troubled." Celine frowned slightly at his description. "It sounds like a place of contradictions." "It is," Ethan agreed, "but that's what makes it interesting. Just like Verenthia has its complexities." Lyra remained skeptical, but listened intently as Ethan spoke about Earth's achievements in science and art, the triumphs and struggles that shaped humanity's journey. "You humans have created remarkable things," Mira remarked thoughtfully after Ethan finished recounting tales from Earth's history. "And yet," Lyra added with a hint of sarcasm, "you still have wars and conflicts." Ethan nodded solemnly. "True enough. But we're constantly striving for betterment, learning from our mistakes." Celine seemed to soften at his words, her earlier hostility fading as she considered the depth of his perspective. Growing bonds. As they continued their discussions over meals and shared experiences within the palace walls, an unexpected camaraderie began to form between them, all four of them navigating uncharted territory together. One day, while exploring the palace gardens, a breathtaking expanse filled with exotic flora, Ethan found himself walking beside Mira as they admired the vibrant colors around them. "Do you miss your home?" she asked quietly after a moment of comfortable silence. Ethan paused before answering honestly. "Sometimes I do miss Earth, the familiarity of it all, but I'm also excited to be here and learn from this experience." Mira smiled softly at him, a genuine expression that made his heart race unexpectedly. "You're different from what I expected," she admitted shyly. "Different how?" he asked curiously. "More open-minded," she replied thoughtfully. "You challenge our assumptions without being confrontational." Just then, Lyra appeared nearby with an exasperated expression on her face as she overheard their conversation. "You're not seriously considering becoming friends with him, are you?" she exclaimed incredulously. Mira shot her sister an annoyed look before turning back to Ethan, with determination in her eyes. "Why not? He deserves a chance just like we do." Ethan felt warmth spread through him at Mira's words, a flicker of hope igniting within him that perhaps this year wouldn't be as unbearable as he had initially feared. As they continued their journey through this strange new reality together, each sister grappling with their evolving perceptions, their lives began intertwining in ways none could have anticipated. The wedding ceremony. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear over the crystalline city of Verenthia, the sun casting a kaleidoscope of colors through the stained glass windows of the crystal cathedral. This magnificent structure, with its towering spires and intricate designs, was a symbol of Verenthian culture, a blend of artistry and engineering that reflected their reverence for beauty and tradition. Today, it would witness an unprecedented union, a human commander marrying three royal sisters. Cultural significance. As Ethan stood at the altar, dressed in formal attire that combined elements of both Earth's military uniform and Verinthian ceremonial garb. He felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The atmosphere was electric with excitement as nobles, diplomats, and curious citizens filled the pews, all eager to witness this historic event. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, their vibrant colors echoing the emotions swirling within him. The three princesses approached, each adorned in stunning gowns that shimmered like liquid light. Lyra's emerald dress flowed elegantly around her as she walked, though her expression remained defiant. Celine's sapphire gown hugged her figure perfectly, her face a mask of nervous energy. Mira's violet attire was ethereal, accentuating her curious nature as she cast glances at Ethan that hinted at something deeper. As the high priest began the ceremony, his voice resonated through the cathedral like a melodic chant. "We gather here today to bind these souls in unity, an alliance forged not only by duty but by understanding." The words echoed in Ethan's mind as he took in the grandeur surrounding him. Ceremony preparations. The ceremony commenced with traditional rituals that celebrated both Verinthian culture and human customs. The high priest spoke of love, respect, and the importance of humility, concepts that resonated deeply with Ethan. He understood that this union was not merely a political arrangement, it was an opportunity for growth and learning for all involved. As they exchanged vows, Ethan felt an unexpected connection with each sister. Lyra's fierce spirit challenged him to remain steadfast. Celine's pragmatism grounded him, and Mira's curiosity ignited a spark of intrigue he hadn't anticipated. Each vow they spoke seemed to weave an invisible thread between them, a bond that transcended their differences. When it came time for the binding ritual, the high priest presented a shimmering crystal, a symbol of unity in Verinthian culture. "This crystal will facilitate your connection," he explained. "As you touch it together, you will share not only your intentions but also your thoughts and emotions." Ethan took a deep breath as he reached out to grasp the crystal alongside Lyra, Celine, and Mira. The moment their hands touched its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him, a wave of warmth that enveloped them all. He felt their emotions intertwine with his. Lyra's defiance mingled with curiosity. Celine's skepticism softened into cautious hope. Mira's eagerness blossomed into genuine affection. The binding ritual. "The binding reveals truth," intoned the high priest as the crystal pulsed with light. "What is hidden becomes known." In an instant, Ethan found himself flooded with sensations. Thoughts and feelings from each sister flowed into him like a river bursting its banks. He experienced Lyra's struggle between pride and vulnerability, Celine's desire for order amidst chaos, and Mira's fascination with his world. It was overwhelming yet exhilarating. Lyra gasped softly as she felt Ethan's genuine respect for her people, a realization that began to chip away at her preconceived notions about humans. Celine's defenses crumbled as she sensed his unwavering determination to make this arrangement work. Mira's smile widened as she discovered Ethan's attraction to all three of them, a shared connection that deepened their bond. As they stood there, hands clasped around the crystal, Ethan realized that this ceremony was more than just a formality. It was an awakening. They were no longer just individuals bound by royal decree, but partners embarking on a journey together, each bringing their unique perspectives to this new life. Emotional turmoil. After the formal rites concluded, they retreated to their shared quarters within the palace, a luxurious suite designed for comfort and intimacy. The energy from the ceremony still buzzed around them, making every glance charged with possibility. Ethan broke the silence first. "That was more intense than I expected." Mira stepped closer to him, her violet eyes sparkling with mischief. "The binding crystal revealed much about us all," she teased lightly. Lyra crossed her arms defensively, but couldn't hide her curiosity any longer. "What did it reveal?" she asked begrudgingly. Ethan smiled at her challenge. "That you're not just princesses, but complex individuals capable of growth," he replied honestly. Celine shifted slightly, her expression contemplative. "And what about you? What did we reveal?" "You showed me your fears and hopes," Ethan said softly. "I sensed your desire for connection despite your initial resistance." Lyra scoffed, but her voice lacked its earlier venom. "This is absurd," she muttered under her breath. "Perhaps," Mira interjected gently, "but we are bound together now, whether we like it or not." Post-ceremony reflections. As they settled into their new reality, each sister grappled with her feelings towards Ethan and towards each other. The initial animosity began to fade as they navigated this uncharted territory together. Lyra found herself drawn to Ethan's unwavering resolve. Celine began to appreciate his practicality, and Mira's curiosity grew stronger each day they spent together. One evening, while sharing dinner in their quarters, an elaborate feast prepared by palace chefs, Ethan suggested they discuss their expectations for this year ahead. "I think we should establish some ground rules," he proposed cautiously. "Ground rules?" Lyra echoed incredulously. "Yes," Ethan replied earnestly. "We need to ensure mutual respect if we're going to make this work." Celine nodded slowly while Lyra remained skeptical but intrigued by his approach. "First," Ethan continued, "no more species-based insults or prejudices." He looked directly at Lyra as he spoke those words. "And second," he added with a hint of humor in his voice, "let's agree to have open communication about our feelings, no matter how uncomfortable it may be." Mira smiled encouragingly at him, while Lyra rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide a flicker of interest in what he had proposed. "Fine," Lyra conceded reluctantly, "but only because I want to see how this plays out." Celine smirked slightly at her sister's begrudging acceptance, while Mira clapped her hands together excitedly. "This is going to be quite an adventure," she exclaimed. Ethan couldn't help but laugh at their dynamic, their personalities clashing yet blending in unexpected ways, as they embarked on this journey together under royal decree, learning and growing. In the days following the wedding ceremony, the atmosphere within the palace shifted from one of tension to a tentative exploration of their new reality. The initial shock of their union began to fade, replaced by an unspoken curiosity that lingered in the air like the sweet scent of blooming Verinthian flowers. Ethan, Lyra, Celine, and Mira found themselves navigating uncharted waters as they adjusted to life as a newly formed family. Daily life together. Their shared quarters became a microcosm of their evolving relationships. Each morning, they gathered for breakfast in a sunlit dining area adorned with exotic fruits and delicacies from both Earth and Verinthia. The initial awkwardness of their meals gradually transformed into lively discussions about their respective cultures. Ethan took it upon himself to introduce the sisters to Earth's customs. "In my culture," he began one morning, "we have a tradition called family dinners where everyone shares stories about their day." He glanced at Lyra, who was stirring her tea with an air of skepticism. "It's a way to bond and understand each other better." Mira's violet eyes sparkled with interest. "That sounds lovely. We have similar gatherings during festivals, but they're often more about appearances than genuine connection." Celine, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward. "What kind of stories do you share? Do you recount tales of bravery or failure?" "Both," Ethan replied, his tone earnest. "It's important to acknowledge our struggles as much as our successes. They shape who we are." Lyra remained quiet but observed intently, her emerald skin reflecting her inner conflict. She had initially dismissed Ethan as a mere human, but his insights began to chip away at her preconceived notions. Cultural exchange. As days turned into weeks, the sisters reciprocated by sharing aspects of Verinthian culture. They introduced Ethan to their traditional music and dance during an evening gathering in their quarters. Lyra played a stringed instrument called the larith, its haunting melodies filling the room with an otherworldly beauty. Ethan listened intently, captivated by the intricate rhythms and harmonies. "This is incredible," he said when Lyra finished her piece. "It tells a story all on its own." Celine smiled at his genuine appreciation. "Music is a vital part of our identity," It connects us to our history and each other. Mira chimed in. Perhaps we could collaborate, create something that blends our cultures together. Ethan's eyes lit up at the idea. I'd love that. We could write songs that reflect both our worlds. The prospect of collaboration sparked excitement among them, and they began planning sessions where they would merge Earth's musical styles with Verinthian melodies, a fusion that promised to be both enlightening and entertaining. Challenges arise. However, not all moments were filled with harmony. As they settled into their new lives together, external pressures began to mount. The royal court had its expectations regarding their marriage, expectations that often clashed with Ethan's desire for genuine connection. One afternoon, while they were practicing music in their quarters, a knock interrupted them. It was Commander Tholos, King Thorian's advisor and a staunch traditionalist who had been watching their union closely. "Commander Carter," he said with a frown as he entered the room, "the court expects you to present your wives at tonight's gala. It is essential for maintaining appearances." Ethan felt tension rise in the room as he exchanged glances with Lyra and Celine. "We're still adjusting to our new lives," he replied diplomatically. "Is it necessary for us to attend so soon?" Tholos crossed his arms, his expression unyielding. "It is not merely about necessity. It is about duty. Your marriage must be seen as legitimate by our people." Lyra bristled at his tone but remained silent while Celine spoke up. "We are more than just symbols for your court's approval." "Perhaps," Tholos replied dismissively, "but your presence is crucial for solidifying this alliance." As Tholos left the room, Ethan felt frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He turned to the sisters, who wore expressions ranging from anger to resignation. "Do we really have to go?" Mira asked quietly. "It seems we don't have much choice," Ethan admitted reluctantly. Bonding moments. That evening at the gala, the grand hall was filled with nobles adorned in opulent attire, an array of colors and textures that dazzled under the crystalline chandeliers. As Ethan entered alongside Lyra, Celine, and Mira, he felt all eyes turned toward them, some filled with curiosity while others bore judgment. Ethan took a deep breath as they approached the center of the hall where King Thorian stood waiting for them with an approving smile. "Welcome," he boomed over the crowd. "Tonight we celebrate not only our union, but also the promise of cooperation between our peoples." As music began to play, a blend of Verinthian rhythms and earthly melodies, Ethan felt a surge of determination wash over him. He turned to his wives and said softly, "Let's show them who we are." Lyra nodded resolutely while Celine took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for what lay ahead. As they danced together under the watchful eyes of nobles and dignitaries alike, something shifted within each sister. Lyra began to let go of her earlier resentment. Celine found herself enjoying Ethan's presence, and Mira reveled in the thrill of being part of something larger than themselves. The dance floor became a space where barriers dissolved, a celebration of unity rather than division. Romantic developments. As they twirled together amidst laughter and applause, Ethan couldn't help but notice how beautiful each sister looked under the shimmering lights, each one radiating confidence in her own way. After several dances filled with laughter and shared glances that lingered longer than necessary, they retreated to a quieter corner of the hall where they could catch their breath. "That wasn't so bad," Mira said breathlessly, her violet eyes sparkling with excitement. Celine smiled faintly, but added thoughtfully, "It was enlightening." Lyra brushed her hair back defiantly, but couldn't hide her smile either. Perhaps this alliance has some merits after all. As they exchanged playful banter and shared stories about their experiences during the gala, Ethan felt an undeniable connection growing between them, a bond forged through shared challenges and triumphs. Later that evening, when they returned to their quarters exhausted yet exhilarated from their experience at the gala, Ethan realized that this year would not only be about learning humility, but also about discovering love in unexpected places, facing external threats. As the days turned into weeks following the wedding ceremony, Ethan, Lyra, Celine, and Mira began to navigate the complexities of their new lives together. The initial shock of their union had given way to a tentative camaraderie, but outside forces were beginning to stir. Whispers of dissent echoed through the halls of the palace, and it became clear that not everyone was pleased with this unprecedented alliance between humans and Verinthians. Conflict outside the palace. One afternoon, while they were gathered in their shared quarters discussing plans for a cultural exchange event, an initiative Ethan proposed to foster understanding between their peoples, there was a sudden commotion outside. The sound of raised voices and hurried footsteps echoed through the corridors. "What's happening?" Mira asked, her violet eyes wide with concern. Ethan stood up, instinctively moving toward the door. "Let me check." As he opened the door, he was met by a group of nobles gathered in the hallway, their expressions a mix of anger and disbelief. At the forefront was Commander Thelos, who had been a vocal opponent of Ethan's presence in Verinthia since day one. "Commander Carter," Thelos called out, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your presence here is an affront to our traditions. You have tainted our royal bloodline with your barbaric ways." Ethan felt tension rise in the air as Lyra and Selene joined him at the door, their expressions shifting from confusion to anger. "Enough," Lyra shouted, stepping forward. "You dare speak to my husband that way." Thelos sneered at her defiance. "Husband, you are bound by decree, not by choice. This union is an embarrassment to our people." Selene crossed her arms defiantly. "And what do you propose? That we reject this opportunity for growth and understanding. That we return to ignorance." The nobles murmured amongst themselves, clearly divided on the issue. Some supported Thelos's view, while others recognized the potential benefits of this alliance. Unity in adversity. Ethan stepped forward, raising his hand for silence. "This marriage is not just about political gain. It's about learning from one another and building bridges between our worlds." He looked directly at Thelos. "If you cannot see that, then perhaps you are the one who is truly primitive." The room fell silent as Ethan's words hung in the air. Thelos's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Mira interjected. "Perhaps we should hold a public forum," she suggested. "Let the people hear from us directly, about our experiences and intentions." Lyra nodded in agreement. "Yes, we can show them that this union is more than just a political arrangement. It's an opportunity for true understanding." Selene added, "We can invite those who oppose us to share their concerns openly. Transparency will quell these rumors." Ethan felt a surge of pride for his wives as they united against Thelos's vitriol. "I think that's an excellent idea," he said firmly. "Let's set a date for this forum and prepare to address any questions or concerns head-on." Challenges ahead. As they began planning for the public forum, Ethan knew they would face significant challenges ahead. The opposition was fierce, and there were those within the court who would do anything to undermine their union. He could sense Lyra's frustration as she paced back and forth in their quarters. "This is ridiculous," she muttered angrily. "Why should we have to justify ourselves to anyone? We are royalty." Mira placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Because we need to show them that we are more than just symbols of an alliance. We are individuals capable of making a difference." Selene chimed in thoughtfully. "And if we can win over even a few skeptics, it will strengthen our position within the court." Ethan nodded in agreement. "Let's use this opportunity to share our stories, about our backgrounds, our cultures, and what we hope to achieve together." Preparing for the forum. In the days leading up to the forum, they worked tirelessly to prepare their presentation. They crafted speeches that highlighted not only their individual strengths, but also how their union could benefit both Earth and Verinthia. On the day of the forum, they arrived at the grand hall filled with nobles and curious citizens eager to hear what they had to say. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as Ethan took his place at the podium alongside Lyra, Selene, and Mira. "Thank you all for gathering here today," Ethan began, his voice steady despite the weight of scrutiny upon him. "We stand before you not just as representatives of Earth and Verinthia, but as individuals committed to fostering understanding between our peoples. Lyra stepped forward next, her emerald skin shimmering under the hall's lights. "I know many of you harbor doubts about this union," she said boldly. "But I assure you that my sisters and I have learned more about humanity in these past weeks than I ever thought possible." Celine followed suit, her sapphire skin glowing with passion as she spoke about their shared experiences, how they had explored each other's cultures through music, food, and stories. Mira concluded with heartfelt sincerity. "We are here not just because we were ordered to be, but because we believe in what this alliance can achieve. A future where our worlds can coexist peacefully." Climax. Confrontation with dissenters. Just as they began to feel momentum building within the crowd, a loud voice pierced through the air. "Lies!" Fellows shouted from the back of the hall. "You cannot trust these creatures. They will bring nothing but chaos." The crowd erupted into murmurs of discontent as Thelos continued his tirade against Ithan and his wives. "Enough!" Lyra shouted back fiercely. "You speak of chaos while perpetuating fear. What have you done to promote unity?" Thelos stepped forward defiantly, but was met with resistance from other nobles who had begun to support Ithan's family. "We deserve answers," one noble called out from near the front. Ithan seized this moment to address Thelos directly. "You claim we are barbaric, yet refuse to see beyond your prejudices. This year is an opportunity for growth, for all of us." The tension in the room escalated as both sides prepared for confrontation, some nobles siding with Thelos while others rallied behind Ithan and his wives. A decisive moment. As voices rose around them, a sudden realization struck Ithan. This moment could define not only their future, but also that of Earth and Verinthia together. "Let us settle this matter once and for all," he proposed loudly enough for everyone present to hear him clearly. "I challenge you, Commander Thelos, to engage in a public debate about our cultures. Let us demonstrate what true understanding looks like." Gasps rippled through both factions, but there was no turning back now. It was time for action rather than words alone. Thelos hesitated before responding, but then he smirked condescendingly. "Very well. I accept your challenge, but be prepared for your failure." With that declaration echoing throughout the hall, the stage was set for a confrontation unlike any other. A battle not just between two individuals, but between two worlds striving toward unity amidst chaos.